Hello and welcome to Best Left Forgotten, the deliberately uncanon and unofficial Forgotten Realms D&D actual play podcast. My name is Nathan Quadrio and I am your Dungeon Master.
My name is Miriam Feats and I play Clarabelle Trollbleeder, the Dwarven Barbarian.
My name is Jess Wolfendale and I play Flick Goldkind, the Gnome Druid.
In case you'd forgotten, at the beginning of this season, Flick Goldkind, the Gnome Druid, and Clarabelle Trollbleeder, the Dwarven Barbarian, fresh from the danger of Season 2, found themselves outside Helm's Hold, ready to meet with the priestess Rahini to seek her healing for Flick's new stony form. In the Tower of the Priestess, Flick started to realize the potential of her connection to the spell plague, as Rahini attempted to draw it from her. And, from a weakened Rahini, the girls began to uncover the potential extent of her conspiracy with the Symphony, and the terrible fate facing down the Forgotten Realms.
Throughout this season, Flick and Clarabelle took on many quests.
Finding the wizard Mordenkainen and enlisting his help in the fight against Rahini and the Spell Plague.
Visiting the library at Candlekeep and completing a critically successful soup book heist.
Falling through yet another portal that allowed Clarabelle to face down and fell a mighty troll, thus completing her quest to earn her family name and become a true Trollbleeder.
Heading to Flick's home island of Lantern to stop the spell plague from consuming the island and destroying Flick's people.
And, of course, learning the correct way to eat an orange.
On their quest, the girls were joined by a series of companions, both old and new.
At the speakeasy in Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion, Flick and Clarabelle met Morty, Mordenkainen's unseen servant. Morty was later sent with the girls to help them on their quest to Lantern. He was their link to Mordenkainen on this journey, though during their voyage, he was lost in a raging whirlpool and transfigured into a pineapple on the ocean floor. The girls also finally met Mordenkainen, the powerful wizard with a penchant for turning his unseen servants into fruits and other various foodstuffs. The girls first encountered the wizard at the beginning of Season 3, and were sent by him to the library of Candlekeep to switch out 2 identical soup books in exchange for his help saving Flick's Island. Mordenkainen then provided the girls with transport to Lantern, and with a magical vial into which they could channel the magic of the spell plague from the island before it was destroyed.
On their way back to Mordenkainen from Candlekeep, Flick and Clarabelle met an ancient primordial, who they discovered after stumbling through a door in the mansion and arriving in the depths of Gauntogrim. Flick attempted to absorb power from this creature and was instead met with a vision of Lantern, the rising waters steaming and receding, as a small part of the primordial's power transferred over to her.
In Episode 8, the girls met Clay Marrowbone, Flick's childhood friend and fellow asterism, who had also been sent out to find a way to save Lantern from the spell plague. Clay found Flick and Clarabelle on Lantern's shore and accompanied them on their way to save the island. Flick was also reunited with Sun and Ray, her parents, upon her return to Lantern. Sun and Ray were overjoyed to see Flick back home, and when Flick departed from Lantern, they left the island alongside their daughter and joined the girls in their final fight against Rohini in Neverwinter. In Neverwinter, Flick and Clarabelle sought out Stefan Goldkind, the exuberant innkeeper from Season 2 who is sweet on Clarabelle, to ask for his help sheltering Sun and Ray as the girls infiltrated the city that had now been overrun by the Symphony. The good brooms! The good! Stefan also accompanied Flick and Clarabelle on their final affront against Rohini in Neverwinter as an invaluable asset in their plan to destroy her. And finally, we saw the return of General Sabine and Toby Stonehill. Toby, now a cloak of the Lord's Alliance, and Sabine and her men also joined the girls in Neverwinter to aid them in their final fight against Rohini.
This season, Flick and Clarabelle were also challenged by old and new foes.
In Episode 5, Clarabelle faced down Xavier the Blanded, the reigning champion of the troll fighting competition that she and Flick discovered after falling through a portal in a book in Candlekeep. Xavier proved a tough foe, but through Clarabelle's relentless spirit and some surprising help from Flick as a kangaroo, Clarabelle emerged victorious as the first true Trollbleeder her family had seen for many years.
This season also saw the Symphony grow ever more present in the girls' adventures. Clarabelle reached out to them for aid in the very first episode, having been captured by Rohini and fed to her ancient green dragon. From that point on, the Symphony plagued Clarabelle with strange visions, and deep in the caverns of Gauntlegrim, struck a secret deal with her to bring the spell plague from Lantern to Neverwinter. On the island of Lantern, Flick was reunited with Baron Moonbubble, an old childhood friend turned servant of the Symphony. It was Baron who was helping the spell plague destroy Lantern, and Baron with whom Flick had a fatal confrontation within the island's temple to Saloon. Through rumors and a distant vision, the girls were introduced to Sorman Galt, the mayor of Neverwinter. They had heard from Shay in Season 2 about his connection to Rohini and her dark plans, and in Episode 9 of this season saw him standing with Rohini atop Lord Neverember's tower, surveying the chaos of the Symphony raining down on Neverwinter. And perhaps their most dangerous foe this season, Priestess Rohini, returned to exact her dark plans for the city of Neverwinter and the land of Faerun. Rohini, at the beginning of the season, attempted to drain Flick of the spell plague's magic and revealed her deep connection to the Symphony and their plot. It was Rohini who was working with the Symphony to bring the might of the spell plague down on Neverwinter, and who Flick and Clarabelle faced down in her true form as a succubus at the top of Lord Neverember's tower.
The final episodes of the season saw Flick and Clarabelle saving Lantern from the spell plague and returning to Neverwinter to face down Rohini once and for all.
In Episode 8, Flick, Clarabelle, and Clay Marrowbone made their way up Lantern's Mountain to the Temple of Saloon, where they knew Baron Moonbubble was planning to release the spell plague's devastating magic. On the way, Clay revealed to Flick information he'd learned on his own journey to find a way to save the island. Clay had discovered that Mystra, the goddess of magic, had disappeared. While he was unsure if she had been killed, imprisoned, or simply gone missing, it was clear that this was the reason the magic of the Forgotten Realms had turned strange and dangerous, as some unknown force had stepped in to control its flow. On the path, the group were waylaid by Baron's lackeys, who restrained Clarabelle and Clay, but let Flick through to the temple. In the Temple of Saloon, Flick realized that Baron had been corrupted by the Symphony, and he revealed to her clues of their plan to bring the spell plague to Neverwinter. The two fought, and became tangled up in the magic of the Symphony. Flick used this magic to reach out to Clarabelle, who was able to strike a deal and transport to Flick's side. As she arrived, Flick reached out to Baron and attempted to draw the power of the spell plague from him. Though in doing so, she took more than she intended, and left his body nothing more than a cold, empty husk. Still needing to save Lantern from the spell plague's power, Clarabelle took out Mordenkainen's vial while Flick used herself as a channel, allowing the magic of the spell plague to flow through her into the vial. While the magic threatened to be too much for her, Flick was able to persevere, saving both Lantern and her people from their destruction.
In Episode 9, Flick's right hand had been changed into a tentacle after her interaction with the spell plague. Fearing Flick's new change, and that it aligned her with the dark forces that had ravaged Lantern, her village forced her to leave. Flick's parents stood by their daughter and joined the girls on Mordenkainen's boat as they sailed away from the island. While leaving the bounds of Lantern, Clarabelle was struck by a vision from the Symphony, calling her to deliver on the promise she had made them to bring the spell plague to Neverwinter. As they arrived, Clarabelle could see a tall, dark obelisk hanging in the sky above the city, and an escort possessed by the magic of the Symphony met the girls at the gate to lead them through Neverwinter. Worried for Flick's parents, the Joy took them to stay with Stefan at the Rat Hollow Inn, and while there, Clarabelle was overcome by the guilt of endangering Flick's parents and revealed to her the truth of what she was doing in Neverwinter. Flick stood by Clarabelle, and the girls left Flick's parents and followed their escort to the wall at the chasm, where they were met by an illithid at the entrance to a portal. The Joy played switcheroo with the spell plague flask, and with some quick thinking, Flick was able to burst the vial of spell plague magic and push both it and the illithid back through the portal. However, as she did, the obelisk above the city became alight with flame. A wave of aboleths rose from the chasm in Neverwinter, and beneath a now red sky, the priestess Rohini and Soman Galt surveyed the chaos of the spell plague spreading from Neverwinter towards the Forgotten Realms.
In Episode 10, Flick and Clarabelle, standing under the spreading magical fallout of the spell plague above Neverwinter, were immediately met by Card Mordenkainen, a two-dimensional wooden cutout of the original Mordenkainen, who offered his help to the girls. Flick and Clarabelle were also reunited with Toby Stonehill, General Sabine Hornraven and her men, who agreed to help in their fight against Rohini and the Symphony. Sun and Ray also came to help their daughter, and with their help, Card Mordenkainen was able to turn Flick's empty glass orb into a container for the spell plague threatening Neverwinter, if Flick was able to channel it once more. Clarabelle also recruited Stefan Goldkind, as Card Mordenkainen thought the girls would need a link to Neverwinter to complete the extraction of the spell plague's magic. The party snuck into Lord Neverember's tower and confronted Rohini at its top, who was channeling power from a dark orb of spell-plague magic that stood on a plinth behind her. Flick ran to cut Rohini off from the orb, with Clarabelle placing herself between the two. During the fight, Rohini revealed her true form as a succubus and reached out to rip Clarabelle's heart from her chest. Stefan, worried for his lady love, ran at Rohini and pushed her from the top of the tower, sacrificing his own life to save Clarabelle and give Flick a few moments with the orb of magic. Flick reached out and began to channel the spell plague into the glass orb and, through her new tentacle hand, managed to contain the spell plague's growing fallout within the walls of Neverwinter. As Flick was channeling the spell plague, Cardboard and Kanan stepped forward, summoning a door and reaching to take the orb from Flick to allow the party to escape before Rohini returned. Flick handed over the orb, the party jumped through the portal, and looked back to see Cardboard and Kanan facing down Rohini, alone.
You've been listening to Best Left Forgotten. You can find and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Best Left Podcast and on our Best Left Forgotten Facebook page, where we post updates, info, and additional content. Music by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Full song list and additional artists can be found in the episode description. Cover art by Cattywampus, who can be found on Fiverr. Thanks to Jess Wolfendahl, our editor, Miriam Feats, our social media manager, and Nathan Quadrio, our GM and producer. If you enjoyed our podcast today, please leave a review and tell your friends.